really cool, by the way. Not only is he a volunteer for NextGen Trucking, but he's the co-host of Rates and Lanes podcast. By the way, you can find him on the Instagram at Chuck Snow CEO. One word. Rates and Lanes, by the way, is available on the tube of you, Facebook, Instagram, and the X, formerly known as Twitter. It's our absolute pleasure to bring the co-host of Rates and Lanes, Chuck Snow, and a real good friend of the show who has spent a lot of time yakking around tables with us, to Nemo Nation. Hey, Dave, tell Chuck good morning.
Hey, Chuck, good morning. Always a pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Pleasure is mine, gentlemen. I've been looking forward to this. Thank you for having me.
I was watching one of the Rates and Lanes episodes this weekend with you and Rico Muhammad, and you were talking with Andrew Stacy with Aviva Insurance. And one other thing, you guys were all kind of all over the place in terms of what was in the cabs. And I remember you talking about over in Europe, you see a lot of stuff, and you see guys with 8 or 9 different, I didn't even know there were 8 or 9 different GPS units just lined up on the dashboard of a truck. And I forget which one of you guys said it, but in Europe, the older guys have the GPS units, and the younger guys, like 99% of them, are watching movies as they're going down the road. And I'm thinking,
that's true.
Well, that's a good place to start a conversation.
It certainly is. You know, my wife and I were there 3 years ago, shortly after we had sold our shares in TRAFFIX. We had this, you have no idea, the burning desire to travel, because we hadn't done a whole lot of traveling, especially in the last 10 years. We were very busy working, and we had made a vow that we would be doing as much traveling as we could. And we really got our belly full. But anyways, we were over in Tuscany on a cooking tour, which is something we had always wanted to do. And they took us around on a bus part of the time between venues they had set up. And I was always on the right side of the bus so I could look at the truck drivers. And because they all drive at 90 kilometers an hour. They're governed in Europe, as far as I know, all over, and which is 55 miles an hour. And it is true. The older truck drivers, they were all sitting there. About 90% of them had a cigarette in their mouth, which doesn't surprise me given the culture.
Mm-hmm.
But the younger ones, about 99% of them, were watching movies. I was dumbfounded, and I said to my wife, I said, when we come back here, I'm not renting a car ever again. I'm not, I don't want to drive with these people on the road.
Boy, oh boy, that is something. Wow.
Let me ask you something else in regards to other observations you made while out on the road, because I realized, by the way, if I was looking around and saw the majority of truck drivers under the age of 50 actually, watching HBO Max, I would probably be only focused on that in particular. What else did you notice, though, in regards to the difference in trucking culture, just from an observational standpoint while you were over there, Chuck?
Well, first of all, everything that we saw was Tridem trailer, single axle tractors, cabovers only. There's no conventionals. They serve wine at truck stops, and it's very common to see truck drivers sitting on their own, having their lunch, having a glass of wine with lunch. And I thought I was not comfortable with that either. And I had seen that before in Portugal many years ago.
Yeah, Chuck, usually I'm always about making an argument for the other side, being kind of a contrarian. But I got to tell you, on this one, I'm completely with you. I don't know how I would feel if I stopped by, rest areas in the United States of America and saw people enjoying a Miller High Life. I got to tell you, even if I knew it was their only one of the day, I would still be like, just let me know what your route is. Why? Because I'm probably going to just stay here until I figure that you've run the course of your route, or maybe I can take an exit and maybe take the back roads and kind of avoid that. Just a kind of final question about that. What do you think allows this to happen? I mean, what do you think is like spurring people to kind of allow this kind of culture to happen? I mean, do they have less accidents to somehow, like the French drink 3 glasses of wine a day and still don't gain any weight? I mean, what's going on here?
I think they probably do have less accidents because laws are very stringent. They're so stringent there. You'll never see any truck ever doing above 55 miles an hour or 90 kilometers an hour. You just won't see it. So that's one of the reasons. And I think your car drivers in Europe, from what I've seen now, they are superior in every single way over North American drivers, except for one thing. I have never seen anybody use a turn signal in Europe.
Well, you know what? I think it's the same reason they don't do it in New Orleans, Chuck. I think the theory is, why is it your business what I'm doing? It's all it could be. I mean, that's the reality of it. I've always kind of thought that in New Orleans. It's like, if I put my blinker on, you're going to know that I'm coming over, and you're going to speed up and try and cut me off. I think that's part of the mentality over there. Okay, so I kind of wanted to pivot here for a second. And Dave, give me a pivot, Dave. Give me a little pivot. Just say pivot.
Pivot.
Okay, we're going to pivot here. And I was kind of wondering where your focus is these days. What are you looking at in particular? Where are your energies being spent? And, both, you with the podcast, but also what is capturing your interest in the supply chain right now?
Well, I spend an awful lot of time mentoring people in the industry because so many people on both sides of the border, they're at their wits' end trying to save their empires. And so many of them I hate to say it, but there's so many of them that can't be saved. And an awful lot of them, the only way they can be saved is they've got to cut back on the number of trucks they're operating. And it's painful when you're talking to these people and you have to give them the harsh reality that you either need to shut this thing down or you need to make it a much smaller operation than what you're running. Because you're losing so much money running 10 trucks. Let's see what it would look like if you ran 5 and you run a model, and more often than not, 5 trucks, they may even show a small profit. At least they're going to break even. Now, nobody should go to work to break even. That's insane. But we are, I think in the U.S., according to what I've been told, we may be at the bottom of the ride. And up here in Canada, we're nowhere near.
Let me ask you this, because you brought up the idea of mentorship, which, as you know, because of our segment here on this show, Education Station, is something that's very important to us. And I was kind of curious, when you function as a mentor, whether that person is an older business owner looking for new ways to go about doing things, or somebody just kind of onboarding themselves into the world of trucking. Let me ask you what your methodology is. How when somebody comes to you and says, Chuck, I'm stuck. Chuck, I need to get things rolling again, or Chuck, I need to make some tough decisions. How do you go about the process of onboarding a new mentee? How, like I said, I know you don't just force yourself on people. They've got to approach you, but what does that look like?
You know what? Somebody will call me. They'll say, listen, I've got a problem. And then we talk it through. And I will ask them, okay, what are you doing? How many trucks are you running? What lanes are you running? What are your empty miles? What are your costs? What are your labor costs? What's it costing you per mile? All these things. And a lot of times the problem stems from people not knowing their numbers. That's where the problem stems from.
Boy, that's an age-old problem too, isn't it, Chuck? It's amazing to me how many people have actually had a career and a business through their lifetimes and never really got that number down. I mean, it's really crazy. We've talked about this 30, 40 years ago.
Yes. I remember listening to you.
Well, that was you, huh?
Yes, it was. I guess I'm giving away my age. I was silly.
So Chuck, I'm going to ask you a little Trucking 101 here based on what Dave just said. And it goes back to my original question. And by the way, you did a great job of answering it in the first place. But okay, so somebody's not looking at their numbers. How does one start looking at their numbers? And of course, your response is you look at your numbers. But let's say you've been doing this and been kind of flying blind. And by the way, this is not an uncommon experience. There are men and women out there who are literally driving blind when it comes to the economics of their business.
More common than not common.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that right now. They are. That is part of the problem with the entire industry. Is you have, and this isn't. I'm not broad brushing the entire industry, but we have so many operators out there that are operating under cost because they don't know their cost. And that is what is ruined the industry, is because people are saying, well, you know what, I'll lose some money this week, but I'll make it next week, and at least I'll keep the trucks rolling. And you're better off sometimes to have that truck sit against the fence and go and find some better work for it than you are to take a cheap trip and lose a whole bunch of money doing that trip. And then all of a sudden you have a blowout on a front tire. Now all of a sudden you've got to replace both tires because you can't just put on one new front steering tire. These things happen all the time. This is the real world.
Okay, that's the follow-up then as well too, because that seems like the hardest advice to give people. We always make the joke, if your wheels aren't turning, you're not earning, right? But,
no, that's not true.
but that's exactly what I'm getting at here, and that's one of those kind of common sense idioms that actually isn't true. And that, it goes back to Kenny Rogers' famous song, The Gambler, that so much of trucking is actually knowing when to hold them, right? Knowing when not to roll, despite the fact that you feel like you're not living that purpose-driven life. Sometimes you look at the number and you say, that number gets me nowhere except further in the red, correct?
Exactly. Years ago when I was working in dispatch on the brokerage side, and there would be carriers that would hold back their trucks on Friday afternoons in Chicago. You'd call them Friday morning. Have you got a truck in Chicago today? No, don't have one. And then at 5 p.m., all of a sudden trucks would miraculously appear. And the reason those trucks appeared was those guys were holding those trucks all day, and they knew if they waited till 4 or 5, they would take that risk. But if they waited till 4 or 5, instead of coming home from Chicago to Toronto for $800 or $900, they could get $1,500 because somebody would be desperate. And those are the people that made money.
Timing is everything.
Chuck, we're about out of time here. But I wanted to make one more quick question. Thanks for indulging us in our kind of ride through not only Europe, but of course the Canadian and the American borders as well too. Here, Chuck Snow joins us this morning. What are you reading right now? Where, along with your own podcast, which you have to do a lot of work in, a lot with the NextGen Trucking, those folks, mentoring people and all that. Where are you getting your news? What are you looking at these days? What are you honing in on that really has captured your attention?
Every business magazine, every business article I can read, just to get an idea of what the temperature is in business. Various businesses that utilize the trucking industry, manufacturing.
Yeah, by the way, Chuck, I got my eye on housing so hard these days. I just keep looking at it until we start building houses again. We're going to keep on kind of limping along. Is that a fair assessment?
I totally agree.
Chuck Snow, by the way, anytime I get a chance to end a segment, Dave, with Chuck Snow saying I totally agree is a good day as far as I'm concerned. And I can't thank you enough, brother, for making time for us this morning. Chuck Snow is a regular contributor, by the way, to Nemo Nation, and we're always thrilled to have him stop in. You can find him on the gram of Insta at Chuck Snow CEO. He is the Rates and Lanes co-podcast host. You can find him on Facebook, Instagram, and X, and on YouTube. It's at Rates and Lanes. Chuck, thank you so much, brother.
Thank you. Take care, gentlemen.